Hello, and welcome to your last unit in the psilocybin peer supporter program. This unit, we're going to focus on ethics. And we have a couple goals this unit. Goal number one is to appreciate the ethical dimensions of peer-to-peer support in psychedelics. Number two is to understand the principles of peer supporter ethics. Number three is to have competence in ethical behavior skills. Number four, to understand commonly encountered ethical issues in the psychedelic ecosystem. And lastly, in this unit, we hope to have a better understanding and appreciation of healer inclusivity and its impact on psychedelic ethics. So hopefully you all enjoyed David's unit on attending to your peer. That unit is especially important, and all previous units up to this point have teed us up nicely for what we're going to talk about today in regards to ethics. So again, this will be the last unit in your unit sessions, and it is with deep respect and gratitude that I get to join you all today for this. A little bit about myself. My name is Hannah, and by day, I work at a tech company enabling sales teams and sales operations. And by night, I love to support and volunteer for a variety of psychedelic companies such as Silo Health. And I support day-to-day planning, operations, event planning, event management. And this is a topic that is very near and dear to my heart in the medicine space. And so I am grateful to be able to bring the rest of this content to you today. So let's get started. In this unit, I'm going to be talking about ethical considerations for the Silo Health psilocybin peer supporters. And this is not meant to be an all-encompassing unit or guide for anyone supporting others who are working with psychedelics or even psychedelic ethics in general. So for more information on psychedelic ethics, we really recommend checking out the North Star Project, and they are a wonderful resource. So acting as a Silo Health psilocybin peer supporter requires a certain specific ethical guide to work with your peers, and that's going to be the focus of this unit. As a reminder, the psilocybin peer supporter role is to be a safe access point of information and idea exchange about psilocybin education, what the psilocybin supported experience may look like, and other dose day considerations. This role never elicits any illegal substances. This role operates as a community resource for risk reduction purposes, and this role demonstrates emotional support, information support, and companionship. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about ethical principles of peer support, core ethical behavior considerations, common ethical issues or dilemmas within the psychedelic ecosystem, and how your role and healer inclusivity may resolve the challenges we face in psychedelic community care. Some challenges we face include accessibility, safety, accountability, sustainability, etc. Healer inclusivity is recognizing that everyone has the right and capacity to heal and support others. It reflects our values of communitas and our recognition that there are many, many roles in healing, and that one does not need to be a decorated clinician in order to be a part of the community care process. Additionally, it is to recognize the indigenous communities where integration of these experiences are a community effort beyond the ceremonial space, where community support is truly embedded in the culture. We also recognize the sacrifices and the efforts of underground communities that have been keeping these experiences alive and well in Western society. So to support healer inclusivity is to also appreciate them and their important roles in their respective communities. Now, ethics is a broad term that covers the study of the nature of morals and specific moral choices that are made. There are fundamental principles that psilocybin peer supporters should be aware about when navigating peer support within their local community. Part of what makes ethical delivery of this style of peer support somewhat challenging is the number of roles played by the psilocybin peer supporter, you, as well as the legality of navigating potential psychedelic ingestion by the peer. A peer supporter moves beyond these boundaries of their role if they diagnose, provide counseling or therapy, suggest or express disagreement with medical diagnoses, offer medical advice, or promote a particular belief, religion, or church. A prescribing clinician, psychotherapist, pharmacist, or shaman may be peer supporters, but assuming the role of a peer supporter does not confer with a clinician, therapist, or shaman. A peer supporter is no longer considered a peer supporter if they operate outside of the roles of peer support and or break the law of their interacted jurisdiction. Now, provided in this next section, I'm going to talk a little bit about the overview of the core principles surrounding peer supporter ethics. And these ethics overlap with general bioethics with a focus on the role of the psilocybin peer supporter. Principle number 1, beneficence. This is the absolute obligation of a peer supporter to act in benefit of their peers in the community. So this includes the duty to educate and inform their peers, protect and defend the rights of their peers, prevent harm, reduce risk, and the duty to promote or maximize the peer's benefit. Fundamentally, you can ask yourself, what is your intention as a peer supporter? It should be to do the greatest good that you can do to support your peer. It's about cultivating a relationship to maximize any potential benefits and help them within the rules in which you're able to provide that support. So that was beneficence. Next, we're going to talk about the second principle, non-maleficence. So this is the absolute obligation of the peer to do no harm. Do no harm towards your peers and do no harm towards yourself. We may be emotionally charged, triggered, or flustered at times when engaging in peer-based support. Understand that these emotions come and these emotions go. It's an ebb and a flow. If it's appropriate, sometimes the most ethical decision to be made is to step away as a peer supporter to a particular peer. Preventing harm and injury is of the utmost importance in this role. Here are some ethical considerations surrounding non-maleficence. First is iatrogenic harm. This is a harm that is caused inadvertently by the process of treatment. Although your actions should not be considered treatment, you will be supporting people who are undergoing a process that may be therapeutic. Iatrogenic harm can be caused through the process of attempting to provide community-based peer support. Examples of this may include the manifestation of anxiety or paranoia due to the legality of psilocybin and potential lack of trust in each other. The uncertainty and anxiety caused to your peer due to the lack of important information shared about dose day and its considerations, or the presence of a challenging experience due to inappropriate engagement with your peer during the dose day itself. For more information on how to attend to your peer, please refer back to David's unit. Another important consideration includes boundary management. This is the ethical management of boundaries, both yours and of the peer you're supporting. A great deal of discussion around boundaries, physical, emotional, and relating to the subject matter should be conducted prior to any direct support of a psychedelic experience. The discussion may include what ethical and consensual touch looks like for each other, and the discussion itself should definitely take place before the dose day itself. Some peers may appreciate their feet to be elevated during the experience, their hand to be held, or a comforting palm placed on their shoulder, along with any predetermined peer-specific forms of physical touch or interaction. Please be aware of your peers' boundaries as well as your own. Just because your peer is comfortable with hugging during dose day does not mean that you must engage in that action as well. It should be completely clear that nudity and sexual behavior during dose day is never appropriate between peer and peer supporter. Another way to reduce risks of harm is the ethical obligation to manage expectations. It is important as a PPS or psilocybin peer supporter to manage your peers' expectations around the experience and encourage setting intentions versus expectations. It is perfectly okay to discuss anecdotes relating to the psilocybin experience for context. Just please ensure you're communicating that every person's experience is both unique and different. You should also discuss any expectation your peer has of you as a supporter to them. How often would they like to meet beforehand? Do they expect you to sit with them during their entire experience? Would they like you to leave the room and just come in and check on them? Setting realistic expectations of your style as a peer supporter and what the peer is imagining that the day might go like should be a clear conversation that happens before dose day itself. Next, we're going to move on to principle number 3, which is autonomy. Everyone should have the power to make decisions and moral choices and exercise their capacity for self-determination. This principle and others needs to be weighed when making decisions as a peer supporter. The role of the peer supporter is to respect the peer's autonomy and recognize in what situation autonomy might be overridden or strongly opposed. A person in a psychedelic state does not have the same capacity versus normal states. In these states, the peer will have a reduced capacity for autonomous decision-making. This autonomy must be respected unless the peer is taking actions that may harm themselves. The boundary of coercion is dividing the line between free choice and actual free choice. It is an ethical imperative to recognize the decreased capacity of decision-making when under the influence of a powerful psychedelic. A peer may give consent during an experience, but may not typically be in a mental capacity where that consent can be accepted ethically. Abuse can stem from the exploitation of people during a psychedelic experience and can occur when a person is experiencing a state of heightened suggestibility. Consent and free choice are the result of consideration options during a lucid state. Let's talk about concepts known as informed consent and capable consent. This type of consent is where the person has been informed of all the factors influencing the process that they are consenting to. This requires you to share sufficient information with your peer prior to their consent. The goal of informed consent is to inform the peer you're working with about your methods and your boundaries, gain their consent during those practices, and probe for their boundaries as well. Agree to their boundaries as long as it does not invade yours. Capable consent is when a person is lucid enough to consent to the process. Consent must be gained when the peer is sober. In order to ethically support your peer, any consent that they give must be informed and capable. This means that discussions of methods and boundaries must happen during lucid states. There is no after-the-fact informed consent. The consent process should be practiced and methodically undertaken with each peer. Don't take things for granted. Let's discuss a concept that we're going to call enhanced consent. During a psychedelic journey and integration process, shifts in values and personality can and most likely will happen. It's ethical to discuss this with your peer. Your peer should understand the potential of unwelcomed personality changes that may happen, which may be antithetical to their former beliefs. For example, a non-spiritual, agnostic, or atheist peer with a newfound sense of spirituality or belief in God could be disruptive to their relationship with their self and to others. It may be challenging to describe the possibility of personality changes due to the ineffable nature of the psychedelic experience, but this should be discussed prior to lending your support. It is unethical to project your personal beliefs onto your peer during this process, and this is a part of being non-directive. So you should begin with maintaining a non-directive state of support. Remaining non-directive is, simply put, trying not to guide the journeyer or peer in any particular direction. Subtle support statements such as relax, let go, follow this where it takes you, be here with this now, are all ethical ways to intercede when a peer becomes stuck and in need of guidance. Consider the risks of having a profound experience. There may be moments that are incredibly challenging for your peer, where they may display signs of discomfort. Discretion during these difficult moments is important to ensure that you're providing the ethical and helpful support. Even in the most difficult of experiences where verbal and body language cues display a challenging moment for the peer, may not be in their best interest to intercede. Knowing where you may need to intercede on their behalf is a careful consideration of the risks and benefits of your actions as a peer supporter. There may be situations where a person is in a state where they may take actions resulting in self-harm, and this is the only time where you have an ethical imperative to override a peer's autonomy. For example, if a peer is signaling that they are about to hurt themselves, regardless of expressed reasoning, you must intercede, beginning with subtle verbal interventions such as, let's get you back to your resting place. Do you think this is a good idea? Can influence a peer to change their course of action. Physical interventions may be needed in case of imminent self-harm. In the case of imminent self-harm, begin with gentle redirection. Your goal should never be to create a state of physical restraint unless absolutely necessary to stop self-harm from happening. Another important part of respecting autonomy is confidentiality. Your work with your peer needs to remain confidential. This includes any names or any details that could be associated with the peer with your discussion. Also, these discussions should only happen in the context of helping others through the disclosure. Basically, this is not something to talk about at parties. Please reserve anything that you need to process from your psilocybin peer support session to integration groups or other psilocybin peer supporters who may be able to support you as a facilitator of these experiences. Next, we're going to move on to principle number 4, which is justice. Justice is interpreted as fair, equitable, and appropriate support for the peer. A concern in the psychedelic ecosystem includes equitable access of appropriate care. The goal of this program is to support equitable access of vetted information to limit the adoption of harmful practices, establish a sense of community, and promote risk reduction idea sharing towards appropriate care-led conversation by you as a psilocybin peer supporter. Understanding these ethical principles of peer support will help you navigate and may empower you to support the co-creation of local regulations surrounding this unique style of supportive care. Let's talk a little bit about psilocybin peer supporter business ethics. There is a burgeoning industry for guides, sitters, and educators who charge exorbitant fees for their services. From Zoom classes costing thousands of dollars to become cosmic gatekeepers, to those selling online ceremonies and coaching for hundreds of dollars an hour, exploitation of people seeking a relationship with psychedelics is rampant. Unfortunately, these days, anyone with an Instagram account can order some shamanic tools and set up shop as an expert to capitalize on the current resurgence of the psychedelic interest. The vast majority of these people are selling surface experiences without understanding the impact of their actions. We believe that if something is helpful, do it. But we also find that the widespread salesmanship of gringo shamanism, facilitated by unqualified, untested, uninitiated people, is unethical and dangerous. The suggestive states of people that enter into a psychedelic state can lead to imprinting bad ideas and practices and is completely unethical, and we do not approach that lightly. It is the highest level of unethical behavior to charge for unsafe and untrained services that perpetuate false or maladaptive belief systems. We believe that it takes time to master a certain set of skills and that helping people is an incredible commitment. So qualified helpers should be accessed through an exchange of values such as currency or trade, so that effective helpers can continue to develop their skill sets and that the vast majority of psychedelic influencers are just people with big platforms. So as a psilocybin peer supporter, I encourage you to find a fair rate of exchange for your time, whether that is through an hourly rate or a gift. What we don't want you to do is set up shop as an expert because you took a 4-hour class and to start charging high fees. For comparison, a psychologist using evidence-based practices may charge more than $100 per hour. This person has completed several years of schooling and observation to ensure that the practices they use are safe and result in positive outcomes. Likewise, a shaman may charge time for a ceremony in the range of hundreds of dollars, and legitimate shamans have spent decades developing relationships with medicines and technologies that they're working with. For shamans, their entire life has been devoted to serving others. So before you start charging for your services, it's critical to think about all you've done to put yourself in this space. Don't just think about how valuable your time is to you. Think more about what you're bringing to the table for the people that you're helping and the community that you're serving. Now let's touch on some ethical do's and don'ts for psilocybin peer supporters. Do, act as a servant to members of your community. Continue to educate yourself on emerging knowledge in the psychedelic space, looking to both Western science and traditional technology. Be a curious skeptic and cautious of boasts and claims of higher knowledge. Treat yourself and others like they're people that you love and are responsible for. Know yourself. If you haven't supported yourself, how can you support your peers? Really understand the peer you're supporting. Set healthy boundaries and know your limits as a peer supporter and human being. Nurture your relationship with your peer. Find your community. Hold yourself to a higher standard of support. Recommend integration practices. Consider your own safety. Consider serving as a scribe for your peer. And learn alongside your peer. Don't source any illicit materials. Don't use your limited knowledge to claim special abilities or privileges. You are a supporter, which is very valuable, not a shaman, doctor, expert, god, guru, prophet, medicine man, or woman. Don't try to capitalize on your status as a peer supporter for unethical financial gain. Equity and fair access should be your guide. Don't be under the influence of any substance that may affect your ability to be present with your peer. You are here for your peer and not yourself. You've agreed to support your peer and respond to them for them. Don't exaggerate the knowledge you have. Don't press your peer on sharing their traumas with you. Don't feel the need to be peers to everyone. And don't ignore your peer. That is what we have for you today in regards to psychedelic ethics. Thank you so much for choosing to spend your time with us in these units. The work that you're doing is truly going to make a difference in the community for many generations to come. So thank you and a deep bow of gratitude. See you next time.